going to talk about the grammar of ROILA. Well, firstly, before I move on to the grammar, I'd like to talk about punctuation. Does anybody know the Dutch word for punctuation? Do you know what I mean when I say punctuation? Yeah, you know. Like special characters like question mark and exclamation mark. Yeah, okay. So ROILA doesn't have any special punctuation. So there's no comma. The only thing that you have in ROILA is a full stop. So at the end of the sentence, you just put a full stop. And the only other rule that you have is that the first letter of the sentence is a capital letter. So that's the same for like any language, I guess. But you don't have like these. So there's no question mark. There's no exclamation mark. They say in English, comma, quotes, double quotes. Which all of this means that there's no change in stress or in tone, because sometimes when you ask a question in natural languages, there's a different stress at the end of the sentence, like what, so it's kind of stretched out. But in ROILA, since you don't have any special characters or any punctuation in that sense, so there's no change in tone or no change in stress. So you always say the sentence in the same way. And one last thing, we don't have any special characters like they have in European languages, like the E with the dots at the top and so on. Well, the first thing about the grammar is the word order. So how do we make a sentence? And the great thing about ROILA is that it takes the most common word order that you see in languages. So it's subject, verb, object. And you see that in most languages. So S, basically the subject, it's called onderwerp in Dutch. And O is the object, B is the verb, which is the verb. So I made a small table just so that it's clear to you guys. I'll start with the English example first. So the English sentence is like I turn left. So you have the subject, you have the verb, and you have the object. And it's the same in ROILA. So you have the top, bottom, upper, before, if you remember from the first lesson. So it means I turn left. And the Dutch one, I guess, you would know. Well, is this? Yeah, I wasn't sure if it should be links off or links off. Is it the same or? Yeah, so that's what I meant. But yeah.
Kan er eens komen van jou net Lisa? Mogen wij daar zitten, want hier kunnen we echt helemaal niks zien. Ja, wij ook niet.
Schrijven jullie gewoon een stukje op deze kant op.
Ik zit daar al met
Daarbij geldt een hele simpele regel. Als je last van je hebt, dan kom je blijf je een uurtje langer.
Is this slide clear to everybody, or you know what I mean to say? Now the grammar of ROILA. Before I give some examples, I'll talk about some principles of the grammar. How did I decide that the grammar should look in this way? Well, the first thing is that I don't want the grammar to have any exceptions. So, for example, I'll start with English because that's easy for me. So, the past tense of eat as in eat something, food, is eaten. But the past tense of walk, like to walk on the street, is walked. And so you see, you have to remember two different things. So, if it ends with a T, you put an EN at the end, and otherwise you put an ED at the end. So you have to remember these two different rules, and it's the same for Dutch, which you can read here. So you have to, yeah. So you see, you have a different rule here, and you have a different rule here. Because, well, it would be for you guys Dutch. When it comes to Dutch, it's your mother language, so you don't have to think about the exceptions too much. But for people who have to learn it, for example, when I was learning Dutch, it's a rule that you have to remember, which makes it difficult. So why not just have one rule and use it for all the words? And that's what we try to do in ROILA. So we have only one rule. It always stays the same. So if you want to say the past tense, it will always be said in one way, and it makes it easy to learn. And the last thing is that the words. So for example, here the verb, it changes, but in ROILA the verb. Yeah. In ROILA the word doesn't change, but you add another word. I'll show you an example of what I mean. So very quickly, a list of the rules that I have in ROILA. We have two pronouns. I won't give the Dutch translation, but you can read them on the slide so that you know what it means. Pronouns means that. So we have two pronouns in ROILA, I and you. So there's no gender. So nouns don't have any gender. So like a table or chair, it won't be like a he or a she. And questions, you always ask questions using one word. So whenever you want to say when, why, which, what, you always use the same word, which is busse. If you, it should be. It should be beautiful, not busse. So that is always used whenever you want to ask a question. Polarity is always, it's like saying no or negating something. So if you remember from the first lesson, we said busse kane, which was like don't like stop or don't or no go in that. Just a little translation. So whenever you want to say no or you want to negate something, you always add busse before the verb. We only have 3 tenses. So again, you can see in the bracket when I say tenses, what do I mean in Dutch? We only have simple past, present, simple future. Details about these and examples of these are in the homework, so I won't talk about this too much, not in this lesson, but maybe in the next lesson. Numbering, we only have 2 levels of numbering, so it's either 1, or if there's many, then we have a plural form. It's not like we say if there's 2 or 3 or 4. So it's only 1 or many. And we don't have any articles. Now just an example of when I meant how would I show like tenses, for example. So I gave you the example of I turn left in the previous table. Now if I want to say in past tense, I would say I turned left, and I would add an ed at the end of turn. But in ROILA we only need to add the word jiffy. When I touch the thing, so I only need to add the word jiffy, which means past tense. So whenever you want to talk in past tense for like I did that, then you would add the word jiffy, and it would be the same for all words. So it wouldn't be like we saw the example like it was ed or en for English, and in Dutch I gave you the same example. Is this table clear? Do you know what I mean? Or? Now, the same example for like a plural form. So if I want to say I like robots, which means like I like not just one robot but more robots, then I would say of lobo tuji. So tuji means like I'm talking about not one robot, but I'm talking about several robots. So if you want to talk about more than one, you would always add the word tuji. So it's the same thing that you see here, but here it's a different word, and here it's a different word. So if you remember this word, then you can easily talk about more nouns. Let's say. Are there any questions? Do you want to maybe make notes of this, or?
They can make their own notes. They're smart enough.
Maybe of this, or? No?
That's cool, not mine. I don't know.
Should I go on? Okay, now for the vocabulary for this lesson. Yeah, it's the same scheme like before. I'll say the word and you guys can repeat after me. And these words we will be using after the break with the robots. So, first word is Ginolu. Pojos. Kilu. Pito. Tobo. Wekepo. Should I go on to the next slide? Tifeke. Kutuju. Koleti. Wepopa. Bemeko. Bibo. Yeah, so this is the robot that you'll be using for this lesson. So if you want to shoot a ball, what you need to say is the color of the ball by saying, like if you put, you should say this sentence, which means I put yellow ball, which means that you put the ball, it's supposed to be so it's kind of like a string here which keeps the ball from not falling. So you put the ball there and then you say to the robot in the microphone, Pito Toba, and in this case it's yellow, so you say Wepoba Jinova, which means I put yellow ball. And then the robot, this is like, it's a color sensor, which means that it can detect colors. So that will flash and it will check the color of the ball. If it recognizes it correctly and it finds out that it's yellow, the ball is going to fall into this thing. It's like a chamber, I call it. When this ball falls into this one, the red ball is going to get fired. So it's not going to be the yellow one. It's going to be the last one.